It is 10 weeks since Israel cut off aid to Gaza and days before what is expected to be a fresh Israeli military assault aimed at, in Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's words, completing the operation, which he then explained meant destroying Hamas. In the last 24 hours, the Palestinian news agency Safa, affiliated to Hamas, says that at least 60 people have been killed in Israeli airstrikes in Gaza. We're joined by the Israeli government spokesperson in the office of the Prime Minister, David Mencer. Good morning to you, Mr. Mencer. Welcome back to the Today programme.
Good to be with you, Nick. Good morning to you.
The UN and aid agencies, many of them, say that there is a risk of famine in Gaza. Does the Israeli government dispute that fact, or are you arguing that whatever is happening is a consequence of a war that you as Israelis need to fight?
We don't dispute that there is hunger in Gaza, but we believe that it is hunger caused by Hamas. Nick, our cabinet met in the dark hours after the October 7th massacre, and they set our war aims. They're the same ones today as they were then, and that it ends when Hamas ends, not before. Israel's objectives, they're not vague, they're absolutely razor focused, they're specific, and they're non-negotiable, actually. That all hostages must come home, Hamas must be stripped of its military and political power, and Gaza can no longer be a launch pad for terror against this country. So every Israeli soldier on the ground in Gaza and everyone here in Israel believes this one thing: to make sure that October 7th never happens again. This war is not about territory, it's about removing a genocidal death cult.
That is clear. We're clear what your war aims are as Israel. But what is equally clear is that the immediate cause of hunger is the blockade of aid to Gaza, a deliberate decision taken by the Israeli government, which, according to your Defence Minister, Israel Katz, is, and I quote, the main pressure lever against Hamas. So you can't blame Hamas for the risk of famine. It's an Israeli government decision to deny food aid to Palestinians.
So Israel is certainly not starving Gaza. Hamas is profiting from the aid, while the UN, unfortunately, despite the nice words of Tom Fletcher there, looks the other way.
Hold on, you're blockading the delivery of aid. Lorries can't get in. There's no more food.
Let me share with you our points. There is food in Gaza. That's our information. During the last hostage release pause, over 25,000 aid trucks went in. Markets, even today, are open in Gaza, so there is food. There is no famine. The real crisis is Hamas.
Hold on, Mr.
looting.
Mencer, we had a spokesman on yesterday, and you're quite right. Of course there is food, and we reflected that on the programme yesterday. But it can be, from memory, forgive me, I don't have the exact figure, but it's something like €50 to buy some tomatoes. So it is food that is only available to people who are wealthy, and looting is taking place because there's so little food. If there was lots of food, there'd be no money made from looting and selling it through the black market. So I put to you again, if you want people to be fed, if you want to avoid the looting, if you want to avoid high prices for food, simple, deliver food to Gaza.
And we are working on just such a plan with our American allies. But let me just correct you. Hamas is looting and selling the aid. They're taxing it. They're diverting it to terrorists. Now, our US allies have proposed a new aid mechanism designed to bypass Hamas. The UN, unfortunately, are refusing to cooperate. Why are they refusing? Because, as they have done since the start of this campaign, and what UNRWA was effectively doing, is they want Hamas to stay in business. There's no hunger in Gaza. It's hunger which is there because Hamas have created that hunger. There's a hunger of truth. Now, we open the gates for aid.
There's actual hunger. We've seen pictures, you will have seen them, of a child starving, severely malnourished, baby Siwa. That baby is starving, could die because of the absence of very basic humanitarian aid. And I put to you again, you can blame Hamas all you like for the situation in Gaza, and of course you can blame them for the war because of the attacks of October the 7th. But the immediate cause of the absence of nourishment for that baby is because there are no deliveries of aid reaching UN agencies that can feed that baby.
That baby, which you've named, is a political PR tool of Hamas. Now, the US has proposed a new aid mechanism, and it's designed to bypass Hamas, to feed
No, that baby
ordinary
is a
Gazans.
starving child. It may be being
That
used as
baby is
propaganda. Of course, it may be
right.
being used as
It is being
propaganda.
used as
Mensa,
propaganda.
we're not
Thank you for
naive
admitting
about
that.
these things.
Good.
Of course,
That's
we can't make our
important.
own decision because you refuse to allow journalists to go into Gaza to film things for themselves. But regardless of why the baby is being seen in public, and no doubt there are people making political points with those pictures, the reality is the child is starving. And if you don't allow aid in, it could, that child, starve to death. So why not allow aid in by whichever mechanism you choose, allow it in?
The US is working on a plan to allow aid in. Our assessment, because we know precisely how much aid has gone in, is that there is still aid in Gaza. But when it comes to the media, our priority is getting hostages out, not sending journalists in. Hamas control everything, every media image which comes out of Gaza. So, real journalists enter on with the IDF. Hamas journalists, unfortunately, never leave. Many of these so-called journalists in Gaza are Hamas operatives simply wearing press vests. Just check
look,
their social media.
Much as
It's
I'd
full
love
of
your
praise
advice
for
on journalism, I'll
Hamas
stick
for
to my job
terrorism.
and you stick to yours. And I think the BBC knows how to judge real journalists from not real journalists. Let's focus on what matters here.
Nick,
What
can I
matters
just
is
stop
whether
you on that
people
one
are
point there?
starving and the
Nick,
warning of
Nick,
the warning
you
of Tom
talked
Fletcher.
about journalism. Nick, this is an important point. You talked about the veracity of journalists, the importance of journalists, which we as a free country very much recognise. Isn't it now time for the BBC as journalists to recognise, to call Hamas what they are, as terrorists, as your own government does?
This is a neat way of trying to change the subject, Mr. Mensa.
No,
you're
it's
a skilled propagandist and we know what you're doing. Now let's talk about
and
your
you're a
government.
skilled journalist, but Hamas is a terrorist
Which is why I'm going to ask
organisation.
you about your government.
Let me
because
give
you're
you,
their
Nick, the
spokesman.
opportunity. Let me give you, Nick, the opportunity to call Hamas a terrorist organisation. Break with the powers that be that sit upstairs from you right now and say right now on air that Hamas is a terrorist organisation.
It's an enjoyable game for you, Mr. Mensa. It's not for people who are worried
Not a
about
game.
people
This
starving.
is serious. You set the
Israel
agenda. The
Katz,
BBC
your
sets the
defence
agenda.
minister. Israel Katz, your defence minister, I quoted to you as saying that the blockade is the main pressure lever against Hamas, the food blockade, the aid blockade. Let me give you another quote. Smotrich, the finance minister, says Gaza will be, and I quote, entirely destroyed. Can you say this morning, on behalf of the Israeli Prime Minister for whom you speak, that the starvation of people in Gaza is not deliberate policy by Israel to win the war?
Why on earth would Israel have sent in 1.8 million tons of aid, enough to fill Wembley Stadium 80 times to the brim, not just on the grass? Why on earth would have Israel have done that if we were trying to do as the accusation which you're making against me? Look, we're facing
I quoted your
moral
ministers.
paradox.
I'm wanting to understand your ministers.
And I'm speaking on behalf of the Prime Minister. It is a broad government. There are many members of the government, but the Prime Minister, as the name suggests, is led by Benjamin Netanyahu. He sets policy. And I can share with you that Israel faces a moral paradox right now. It's been created by Hamas. We have an opportunity to strike every military target, but when we do, we get condemned. Or we don't strike them, and we reward the use of human shields. Hamas are deliberately embedding its commanders underneath hospitals, knowing that any Israeli airstrike, however legal and precise, will generate headlines, as they have on your program today, which they can weaponize. It's a textbook case of asymmetric warfare. The IDF is punished for acting, and Hamas is rewarding for hiding.
So let me ask you about your Prime Minister then, because he has said that the military will enter Gaza with full force to complete the operation, his words, meaning, he says, destroying Hamas. How soon will there be an escalation in the military assault? And is the view in the end, Mr. Mensa, and I ask you for clarity, no, it's not an accusation, I ask you for clarity, is the view inside the Israeli Prime Minister's office that any level of civilian casualty, any risk of civilian starvation, is a price that will have to be paid to defeat Hamas?
Again, that's not an accusation which I accept in any way, shape, or form. Yeah, so I'll tell you, look, the Prime Minister's confirmed that with the release of our latest hostage, we've sent a delegation for negotiations in Doha. They're there on the basis of the original Witkoff framework. We want that framework to succeed. Israel's already accepted it. Hamas, unfortunately, the terror organization, has refused to accept it. Now, look, this Witkoff proposal is a phased deal. It means that Hamas must release hostages. But the reason why we have put this military threat, and the reason why our hostage was released over the last couple of days, was because we put this military threat onto Hamas. Now, when Hamas, who are a genocidal death cult, for a jihadi, they don't care about their own civilians. They only wish more Gazans were killed. Hamas hate to lose ground. They hate to lose physical ground. When Hamas stopped releasing hostages, we have created a plan to increase the pressure, and it will increase exponentially. Now, we have called up tens of thousands of our soldiers precisely to put pressure on Hamas to release our hostages. This war will end, I'll tell you when it will end, when Hamas are no longer in power, when they leave Gaza and our hostages are back. Not a day before.
Israeli government spokesperson from the office of the Israeli Prime Minister. Thank you for joining us again. Listening to that, our international editor.